Welcome back to PSC Tech Bytes. As I promised to my friend Waldek last week, today I want to give you a brief introduction about the Microsoft 365 CLI tool. In fact, the Microsoft 365 CLI is a command line interface which is cross-platform, so you can use it on Windows, Linux, Mac OS. You can use it in any kind of shell like Bash, like Azure Cloud Shell, PowerShell of course, and Commander, and so on and so forth. Technically speaking, it is a CLI to manage most of the main workloads available in Microsoft 365, like for example SharePoint Online, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft To Do, and so on and so forth. Plenty of workloads that you can manage using the CLI approach. It is an open source project, and here you can see the URL of the GitHub repository, and it's a really brilliant and wonderful community effort because a lot of people from the community are contributing and building this great CLI tool. Last but not least, you can find a bunch of samples still on GitHub from where you can take inspiration to create your own scripts based on the Microsoft 365 CLI. So let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to start using Microsoft 365 CLI. So in order to play with the Microsoft 365 CLI, you need any shell of your choice. And for example, here I'm using PowerShell. And first of all, you will need to install the Microsoft 365 CLI using npm install -g to make it global, and then @pmp/cli-microsoft 365. Of course, I already installed it on my environment, and so I can simply start using it. So, first of all, we need to log in to the target environment. And the first option is to just say Microsoft 365 login. You will be prompted with the URL for a device login. So, if you copy this value, which will be the device code, and you control-click on this link, you will be able to provide the code and to log in with your credentials into your target tenant. By default, Microsoft 365 CLI will use the PMP management shell multi-tenant Azure AD application that we have registered in the Microsoft 365 PMP tenant. So you will have a restricted set of permissions, delegated permissions for your user. Now, if you want to play with it, you can, for example, use the Microsoft 365 CLI and providing the command that you want to use. Let's say that you want to connect to a site like this one, for example, and you want to see what is the list of lists in this site. So first of all, let me use the M365 SPO so that we target SharePoint Online. We target a site in SharePoint Online, and we want to get that specific site. And I provide the URL of the target site. By doing that, we can get back the information about the site, which can also be retrieved using the --output JSON to see the output as a JSON file instead of a table with all of the results. Imagine that you want to manage the JSON and do stuff on top of the returned file. Moreover, if you want to get the list of lists in the target site, you can easily use the following command. So M365 SPO still, then list because you want to access the collection of lists and you want to list all of the lists in the site. So you provide the URL of the site and you will get back the collection of lists, again as a table, or you can eventually get it as a JSON object. But you can also do more. For example, in my Azure Active Directory tenant, I registered a custom application. So under Azure AD, I went to app registrations and I registered a new application. Let me search for it right now, M365 CLI. And following the instructions that you can see in the link just below this video in YouTube, you can create your own application, you can register your own application, and you can use it to access and to authenticate when you log in with Microsoft 365 CLI. By doing that, you will be able to configure your custom permissions. So for example, in my application, these are the permissions that I configured. So I can go back, I can log out from my Microsoft 365 CLI session, and I can log in back using the application ID and the tenant ID of the application that I registered in my Azure AD tenant. So let me do that. Let me do Microsoft 365 login. I will provide the app ID, which will be the unique ID of my application, so this value, and the directory ID, so the tenant ID of my target tenant. By doing that, again, I will have the device login. So let me copy the device code and let me go to the device login URL. I'll paste the code, I will confirm my user account, and now I will be authenticated using the Microsoft 365 CLI application that I have registered in my tenant. And again, I can use it, for example, to read the list of teams that I have in Microsoft Teams in my tenant, and as you can see here, I have a bunch of teams available, but I can also use it to get the channels that I have in a specific team. Like, for example, I can do something like that. M365 Teams, I target the channel, and I want to get the list of channels in the team with this specific ID. And by doing that, I can get back the channels in my target team. Of course, we can also use an application which will have permissions to create objects, and we can use M365 CLI to create new teams, to create new channels, to register applications in Azure Active Directory and stuff like that. Moreover, as I told you, the Microsoft 365 CLI is a cross-platform solution. So we can also use, for example, in a Ubuntu system running in my Windows machine, we can use a Docker image that we can use to run Microsoft 365 CLI inside my Ubuntu running machine. So let me do that, Docker run, and now I can play still inside my Ubuntu machine, virtual machine, using the Microsoft 365 CLI. So again, M365, I can see the help for the commands of Microsoft 365, and I can say Microsoft 365 login. And I will be prompted again to log in, providing a device code as before, and I can control-click on this one, I provide the code, and that's it. I'm again using M365 CLI inside a Linux machine. So really simple and easy. Like always, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. And remember, subscribe to this channel. Thank you.